Wow, what a day, what a day. A day that was supposed to be highlighted by NFL cuts. We got the Khalil Mack trade. This pains me to say this. Jerick McKinnon looks like an ACL, but we'll go over that and much, much more. I want to start with the Khalil Mack trade. It looks like it's going to be 2 first-rounders given up by the Chicago Bears, and then they get Mack and a second-rounder in return, and then they'll also give them a third-round pick as well. I really like this trade for both teams. I think, the Raiders' defense wasn't really good with Mack there, so why not get 2 first-round picks, get 2 starters for half of what you were paying Mack. So I like that deal for the Raiders. And Chicago just looks to be all in. I love what they've done in the offseason. They got a true #1 receiver. They drafted a great slot guy in Anthony Miller. They got the coach to pump up that offense. Their defense was already good. The only thing they really lacked was a pass rusher, which now Khalil Mack will bring. Their secondary is really good with Fuller, so I definitely like the Chicago Bears. They're going to be a top 10 defense. They were last year, and they're going to be that much better this year. Speaking of defenses, a lot of people don't really go over this. It's something that's overlooked, but it could be kind of important there, especially if you had like a defense like the Jags last year. Baltimore, kind of underrated, was almost equally as good as the Jags, was the #2 defense last year. I actually have them in one of my leagues. And let's talk a little bit about defenses, okay? So I'm going to give you guys my rankings. And number 10, really underrated defense. I like them a lot. Going undrafted in many leagues, could provide you some tremendous value, is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, last year they were 14th, and that was with a slew of injuries. Still managed to be 11th in pass defense, and they got a nice secondary, which is very hard to get these days. Awuzie, they got Jones in the slot, so they got those guys coming back. Randy Gregory may or may not play, but their pass rush was already good with Lawrence, so I like them to rack up a lot of sacks, some interceptions, lots of turnovers. Really like the Dallas Cowboys, and you don't have to reach for them whatsoever. And number 9, they're kind of a juggernaut, is the Houston Texans. They've had to deal with a slew of injuries from Clowney to Watts. We don't know how they're going to come back. I do expect them to play well if they're healthy, but that secondary is still a concern. However, if you got Watt and Clowney wreaking havoc on the edges, that's going to, hide a lot of the secondary deficiencies. So I like Houston coming in at number 9. Number 8, they had a down year last year, is the Denver Broncos. I think losing Wade Phillips was a bigger deal than people, gave him credit for. And look what he did already to the Rams defense. We'll talk more about them later. But getting Chubb with Miller, I think the Denver Broncos at number 8 have the potential to be higher on the list, but I need to see it before. Next, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are number 7 on my list. They're actually a better real-life defense than in fantasy. I think in fantasy they kind of underperformed. But, I mean, you got Xavier Rhodes at corner. You have the signing of Sheldon Richardson. So you got some nice pieces there. Maybe they'll be improved. But they're a safe defense. I think they're not going to win you games like a Jags or the Rams might this year. But they'll definitely won't lose it for you. And definitely a defense you could start in on a consistent basis regardless of the matchup. Next, we got Khalil Mack's new team, the Bears. They were 7th last year. Now they get Khalil Mack. So granted, got to bump them up at least 1 spot. I think they're going to rack up some points. I still worry a little bit about the run defense, but all in all, I think with that offense, they're going to put a lot of pressure on the opposing team's offense to produce, so that might lead to some turnovers. Next is the Chargers, another team. Would have been higher if not for injuries, losing Jason Verrett hurts. But, I mean, they also got Derwin, which was, I think, one of the best picks in the first round. Really high on him. Of course, they got Joey Bosa. They were a great defense last year. They were number 5, and I have them at that spot there as well. Next was the number 4 defense last year, is the number 4 defense this year, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, I think they take a step down because even though I have him at number 4. But I kind of concerned at the linebacker position. But it's weird. The Philadelphia Eagles, they never seem to have a great defense, but fantasy-wise, they always produce points. So Philadelphia Eagles, number 4. Although I could see them slipping down even a little further, to be honest with you, if a team like the Bears, the Chargers, Denver Broncos turn out to be what they're capable of. Number 3 was the number 2 defense last year. Love Baltimore. I think they're as safe as you can get. They're good run defense, great in the secondary. They got pass rush. They create a lot of sacks and turnovers. Love the Ravens. I kind of was a little torn between them and the Rams, number 2 and 3, and 1, really. The Jags, before we skip ahead, I got the Rams at number 2, but they could very well be the number 1 defense. With Wade Phillips at the coordinator, they were number 4 last year, and now they got Marcus Peterson, they got Talib, they got Sue. The only thing I worry about is sometimes those teams with all those star players, they tend to underproduce sometimes, but if they live up to their potential, they could be this year's Jags for sure. And then number 1, I got the Jags. And the Jags, I mean, you got to expect some drop-off. They can't score 20 points a game in fantasy, every week like they did last year, or what appeared to be 20 points every week. They also were, perfect when it came to health. They had no injuries, so you got to expect a little bit of a decline. But with those corners, Jalen Ramsey, you got Campbell, getting all those sacks, putting pressure, and then I forgot the rookie's name, but I'm hearing great things out of camp out of him. So Jaguars obviously is going to be your safest bet, but I think number 1, 2, or 3 are interchangeable between the Jags, the Rams, and the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, now moving on to the McKinnon. It looks like it's an ACL. We know it's the knee. I think it was a non-contact, which usually means ACL. And I just drafted him 2 days ago. I had a bad feeling, and this is why a lot of people, they get on me about my rankings and things like that. But sometimes, a lot of things I go on intuition, to be honest with you. And McKinnon, he's always battled with some injuries or was already injured before the ACL. I was worried, but he was in the 4th round. I had to pick him up. But that's why I rack up on running backs. There's 6 running backs I have on my team right now, so I could just plug in Cohen for him or Sony Michel, Duke Johnson. And then I was lucky enough to pick up Matt Breida right away. Shout out to Fantasy Football Beast. I saw it on his Instagram first that the McKinnon injury could possibly be serious. Luckily, Breida was available, scooped him up real quick. And to be quite frank, I don't think there's really any drop-off between McKinnon and Breida. McKinnon's a nice player, but the reason I was so excited about him was because he's under Kyle Shanahan's offense. They love to utilize running backs. They had him lining up all over the place. So I think Matt Breida could do everything McKinnon can, and the fact that I have Breida, so I'm not really worried about it at all. And neither should you guys, unless, you don't have depth at the running back position and you didn't handcuff Breida, then, yeah, you're going to need to make some trades or some miracles on the waiver wire. But there shouldn't be a real big drop-off. And you got to expect injuries. It's part of the game. And that's why building a bench is so good, because especially early on in the year, everybody's starters are pretty much the same. As far as cuts are concerned, nothing too crazy. Maybe Martavius Bryant, that was a little bit of a shocker. This guy, man, what a disappointment. But, I mean, you bring in the weed man to California. I mean, I don't know who thought this was a good idea. You gave up a 3rd-round pick for him. Shout out to Pittsburgh getting a free 3rd-round pick and getting rid of that headache. But he got cut. Some other names like Gillislee, I think that was expected. Jeremy Hill looked better in camp. I was a little surprised about the Patriots cutting Bolden. Not really fantasy relevant, but a guy they liked on special teams. Thomas Rawls is another name that used to be fantasy relevant a couple of years ago. It's sad how these running backs just fall off from one year to the next. And that's why sometimes in my rankings, you'll see me kind of look forward and predict some of these drop-offs, because when it comes to NFL players, it's unlike every other year. Basketball, you usually see a gradual decline. In football, a player could be a Pro Bowler one year and then, basically out of the league the next. You see it quite often. So, unfortunately, Thomas Rawls, I think this is the last straw for him. Anybody else I could think of off the bat? Dan Bailey, I was shocked. He's been a good fantasy kicker throughout the years. Dallas cut him. And nothing too crazy. Perriman from Baltimore, he hasn't really produced, officially a bust now. And I think that is about it. But McKinnon owners, if you have any questions how you can make up for him, leave a comment down below. Follow me on social media at SportsLibs, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And look forward to helping you guys out throughout the year. I'm out.